Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to some who here in Beis Medrash came back from America. Pesach Sheni Sameach, everyone. Unfortunately, we didn't have the experience of the Minchat Chinuch discusses if Mashiach would come between Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni, will we all have to sacrifice Pesach Sheni? Does it matter? Does Pesach Sheni come only if there was a opportunity to offer Pesach Rishon, but someone was far away or was impure and couldn't, then he gets a second chance? Or does Klal Yisrael get a second chance for even if not even being able to sacrifice Pesach Rishon? Do we still get a chance to sacrifice Pesach Sheni? His conclusion is, of course, if that were to happen, we would ask the Mashiach what to do. But Minchat Chinuch says that he thinks we should be able to sacrifice Pesach Sheni had the Mashiach come between Rishon and Sheni, but it seems like we missed a chance unless today he can still come today, right? What's that? Oh yeah, to distribute matzah. Very nice, very nice. Yeah, we also have a lot of leftover matzah. Whoever wants can come over. Yeah, we all have lots left. It's customary to eat some matzah today. By the way, the halacha is that matzah chametz imo b'bayit, meaning during Pesach Sheni you had chametz at home and matzah, and you can have from both. But with the korban itself, with the meat of the sheep that was offered as korban Pesach, you had to have matzah only. Right. At home, you were able to have chametz. With the meat itself, you can only eat it with the matzah. Yeah. Anyhow, turns out that looking further on last week's issue we discussed, I'll quickly remind, someone showed me another very interesting issue, which I'll speak about now in a few minutes. We discussed last week that there are two brachos in the Shmoneh Esrei, which again, I've been saying this all over the place. Unbelievable. No one noticed this point even though we're saying Shmoneh Esrei. We've been saying Shmoneh Esrei maybe hundreds of thousands of times in the meantime in our life, and many more, B'ezrat Hashem. No one noticed this point, that out of the 19 brachos that we have in the Shmoneh Esrei, in the Amidah, only two start with a Vav. Normally, it begins with the first word of the bracha. Baruch Atah Hashem begins the Shmoneh Esrei, and then Atah Gibor, Atah Kadosh, Atah Chonen, Hashiveinu, Slach Lanu, Re'evonenu, Refa'inu, Barech Aleinu, Tka B'shofar. Every bracha just begins with the word of the bracha. Only two brachos begin with a Vav. We have Ve'la Malshinim Al Tihi Tikva. We don't say La Malshinim Al Tihi Tikva. And we say Ve'li Yerushalayim Mircha V'Chayim Tashu. We don't say Li Yerushalayim Mircha V'Chayim Tashu. So 2 out of the 19 start with a Vav. And then it was a big, very puzzling to me to find that out and to figure out why is it so. So I won't repeat what we said last week about explaining the Ve'la Malshinim, but the Ve'li Yerushalayim, also last week we discussed the fact that it seems like similar to Ve'la Malshinim that there are missing words in our bracha. Really, it's in the midst of a bracha. It's not the very beginning. And that's how we find in all the 19 brachos that in the middle of the bracha, there are many vavs. Vetishkon betocha, vetechazen ayneinu. Many vavs in the midst of the bracha. So, Ve'li Yerushalayim, there are those who point out to a Nusach Eretz Yisrael. There's a siddur that was put out with Nusach Eretz Yisrael. It was an ancient Nusach here in Israel, unlike the Babylonian Nusach, which we all carry till today, because we came, after all, after the exile of Beit Rishon, we came from Babel. But the original Nusach in Eretz Yisrael was that the bracha of Et Tzemach David Avdecha Merat Tzmiach, the following bracha after Ve'li Yerushalayim, used to be in Nusach Eretz Yisrael. I saw it in the siddur. It used to be before Ve'li Yerushalayim. It was switched. The order was switched around, and not only was it before, it was one bracha. adjacent, connected to one bracha. And that vav makes sense now because it's in the middle of the bracha. And you send off by saying, Baruch atah Hashem, Elokei David uvonei Yerushalayim. One bracha together. We won't go into the reason why it was separated and switched around. The order was switched and separated one from another. But it seems like the vav of Yerushalayim is still remnants of the fact that there used to be one bracha between the two, connecting the two. So that's probably the most correct answer. And therefore, by the way, there's no reason to continue saying that vav today because we've separated two brachos and switched the orders. So there's nothing really missing anymore. All the words are there, just in the switched around order. So no reason why we should start Vel Yerushalayim Echa and just not Yerushalayim Echa. As the Sfarim, Nusach Edot HaMizrach, don't start any bracha with a vav. Not La Malshinim and not Yerushalayim. They start the brachas like all other 19 with Tishkol Betoch Yerushalayim Erach Kasher Dibarta. That's how they begin with Yerushalayim Echa. And they begin La Minim Ve La Malshinim Al Ti Tikva. Or La Meshumadim Ve La Malshinim Al Ti Tikva. But they don't start with a vav. So probably as usual, this Edot HaMizrach have a more original, correct nusach to their brachos and tefillos. Altogether, maybe halachos also. It's a lot to learn from them. Anyhow, that's one answer. But the other answer that someone showed me during this past week, which also explains very beautifully the vav, and then really we can keep on saying it with the vav. And that is due to the fact that there is the Yerushalayim Shel Mata and Yerushalayim Shel Mala. There's a mirror city to our Yerushalayim down on earth, up in heaven, which is of course a spiritual entity, which gives Yerushalayim Shel Mata, the Yerushalayim on earth, its holiness in a much greater fashion than just keeping holy here as human beings with purity and holiness and all that. Besides that, there's a twin city up in heaven of Yerushalayim that gives it much greater holiness. Besides that, this is, by the way, the Ari Kadosh explaining this and explaining the Vav of Bel Yerushalayim. Besides that, Yerushalayim is also the connecting city of the entire Klal Yisrael, of Am Yisrael. Not only because we all make Aliyah L'Regel to Yerushalayim 3 times a year by the Shalosh Regalim, we're meant to be all together in Yerushalayim. Not only that, but also because it's the only city, the only location in the land of Israel that wasn't given to a specific tribe. It was not Yerushalayim lo nitchalka lishvatim. Although the tribe of Yehuda and the tribe of Binyamin had parts of Yerushalayim, but the actual Har HaBayit was kept for all. It wasn't given to any specific tribe as territory of a specific tribe. It remained Klal Yisrael. So Yerushalayim ke'ir shechubra la yachdav. David HaMelech says Yerushalayim ke'ir shechubra la yachdav. It's a city that connects all of Am Yisrael together. Besides connecting all of us to Hashem, to heaven. So it's two-way connection, Yerushalayim. Up, down, and sideways. Klal Yisrael and all of us with Hashem being twin city up in heaven. And it says, En HaKadosh Baruch Hu nichnas liYerushalayim shel ma'ala ad shikansu Yisrael liYerushalayim shel mata. Meaning Hashem is waiting for us, as we did in the Six-Day War, to conquer the city and to rebuild it and to dwell in it and to sanctify it here on earth. And only then will he enter, so to speak, Yerushalayim shel ma'ala. Meaning only then will he bestow us with holiness, divine holiness from up above. That's when there'll be already the Beit HaMikdash and prophecy and Sanhedrin and Malchus Beis David and all that. That's going to be called HaKadosh Baruch Hu entering the city. It's going to be totally holy the way it's meant to be. So the Vav is Vav HaChibur. The Vav is a letter that connects between things. So Vel Yerushalayim comes to show that Yerushalayim is a chibur. Yerushalayim connects between us and heaven and between us ourselves, one another. So that's a very nice idea to explain the Vav after all, even though it's a little bit b'diavad, meaning after the mistake of leaving it there, even though we disconnected the two brachos and we switched around the order, but after all, there's a reason for that to remain there. And all this, just another short point, all this explains very beautifully. I think the Yerushalayim Kadosh says this. Hakar in Parshas Kedoshim, which we just laid 2 days ago, the Torah tells us to mimic Hashem, Kedoshim Tiyu, Ki Kadosh Ani Hashem Elokeichem. Why that specifically, and how can that be done? We could have also said Giborim Tiyu, Ki Gibor Ani Hashem, or Chasidim Tiyu, Ki Chasid Ani Hashem. From the word of Chesed, not Hasidism of bells and gur. From the idea of being righteous and good to people. All those types of Rachmanim Tiyu, Ki Rachum Ani Hashem. We don't find by any other attribute, positive, holy attribute of Hashem that the Torah tells us, be like Hashem. It says in general to act as much as we can, as perfect as we can like Hashem, but here it's very specific to this category of Kedusha, of holiness. Be holy because I, Hashem, am holy, I'm holy. Now that, besides the fact that it was singled out of all the other attributes, but besides that, how is that possible after all? The fact that Hashem is holy, how does that explain Ki Kadosh? Because I am holy, then you also be holy. Hashem is above and beyond. We can't fathom. We can't mimic in any way. We can strive as much as we can to perfect ourselves, to be as perfect as possible, but there's so much between us and him. Why is that an explanation to being holy? So I believe it's the Yerushalayim Kadosh. I heard this few moments on radio by Rav Rosenblum, who quoted this, that the Torah is coming to tell us here that that's really our mission in life and the peak of everything else, meaning our entire life should be headed towards being holy. Anything we do in life. So Gvura and Rachamim and Chesed and Din and Tzedek, all the other amazing attributes, and Emes, all that leads to being holy. That's like the peak of everything. So it's inclusive of everything else. That's why the Torah singleizes it. It's not just one detail within many details. It's the goal of our life to be holy. And that also fits very well with the Mesilas Yesharim, who quotes from Avodah Zarah, Kaf 20, where Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair famously says, Torah meviah lidei zirut, zirut lidei zrizut, zrizut lidei nikiyut, nikiyut lidei prishut, prishut lidei tehara, so on and so forth. There's a ladder to climb up step by step, and that's the whole book of Mesilat Yesharim. The Ramchal, or Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, wrote a book elaborating over this short braita of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. He made a whole book out of it to explain each and every step. What does it mean to be Zahir, to be Zariz, to be Naki, to be Parush? Each one of these levels, how do we achieve it? But this entire ladder, and Mesilas Yesharim is a book to be read hundreds of times in our life, to repeat it over and over again, read it over and over again, because every single time you read it, it sinks more into you and you become more, your life becomes fits and goes by these steps of the ladder. So the final step, the final stage to reach is Kedusha. That's the final stage that Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair speaks about in his Brisa, which is the last expanding of the Mesilas Yesharim to explain what that means. And what does it really mean to be holy? And of course, it's after many steps. It's not easy to achieve it all. It's a very, very huge achievement. But what does it mean to be holy? You would think that it means that you're all the way up in heaven. You disconnect totally from materialistical life. You're living like on a planet somewhere else, not disconnected from this world, and barely eating and drinking and sleeping and so on, and not talking to anyone and not being involved in anything. It's totally the opposite. The Mesilat Yesharim, when he discusses what Kedusha is, after achieving all the other levels, it doesn't come, you can't jump a few steps up and be holy. It comes after many steps before. But when you reach the stage of holiness, says the Mesilat Yesharim, that means you are the most connected person to life, to real life. You live a full life of eating and drinking and being involved and being socializing, completely like everyone else. So what makes you holy? The point is that everything you're involved in this world is you're aware of Hashem being with you every single moment of your life. That's the holiness. You're not like everyone, like a normal human being that just lives his life or her life as a person. And sometimes we meet with Hashem when we do a mitzvah, or we daven, or we learn. That's when we meet Hashem. But otherwise, we're like normal people. We go to work, we speak to someone, we eat like normal people. No, every single second of our life is in connection with Hashem. So he says, like, for example, you eat a full meal, but your feeling is you're eating from a mizbeach, from the altar. Your regular cereal and milk, but it's like from discussing brachos. But the idea is that it's completely holy. The act of eating now is like eating from the altar, from mizbeach. You feel Hashem in your whereabouts every moment. And when you speak to someone, so every word you say, you're aware of the fact that Hashem is right near you. Imagine that. You're feeling Hashem next to you and you're speaking to people. It makes your whole life holy. It makes your whole life much more straight, much more positive, much more truthful to what we're meant to be. No lashon hara, no annoying anyone or offending anyone, because Hashem is right there. It's like mothers say many times to children, would you act this way if one of your friends were here now? It's a very famous line when they act up. So the exact same line should be, would you act this way if you see Hashem right now with you? That should be a message to all of us. Yeah, she's online. But that was many, many years ago when she used to say such things to me.
She didn't say that to you. No.
Yeah, probably. I'm sure, yes. But that's the idea of holiness. So it's really tremendous, but it takes many, many steps and a whole lifetime of work to reach that point, just by reading Mesilat Yesharim over and over again, and not just reading it, it's absorbing what he says and acting the way he says to act, and then you slowly climb up the ladder, hopefully to reach that level of Kedusha. The one after that is already Ruach HaKodesh, Nevuah. That's already a prophet where he's so connected to Hashem that he receives messages from Hashem directly. That's already above and beyond. Okay, so that's for Kedoshim. I'll go back to our halachic discussions. And by the way, the issue of saying a bracha over the tafel when you're eating a mixture of ikal and tafel, as we've been speaking about the past few shiurim, the fact that at the first bite of taking the food you're about to eat, the first bite must include the ikar, because if it's only the tafel, then you say a separate bracha over the tafel, even though majority of your spoonfuls will be together with the ikar. As we said last week, we're supposed to say a separate bracha over the tafel, just in case. We should try not to be in that situation. Better to just say the bracha over the ikar, over the main food, and the minor one gets nullified. But if it so happens that you have on your first spoonful only the tafel, you're supposed to say the tafel's bracha on its own. That's something that is very surprising to many people I've said this to over the past week. It's a big chiddush that no one thinks that should be the halacha, but it is. It was checked, and that's the halacha. So better not to be in such a situation or circumstances, but if it happens, that's the halacha. Okay, next situation. Yeah. Yes. No problem. It came from you. Yeah. Yeah. Because you had cornflakes? Oats. Whole oats. Okay. And they're not baked before? So it's hadama. Okay. Puffed. They're puffed? They're just, what are they, raw? Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's like shalva. It's like the puffed wheat, which is, yeah, but I'm saying it's like the same idea that it's hadama. That's hadama, yeah. If there's no process, it wasn't processed. Okay.
I made the Mezonot first. I made the plate separately and then did it. What else was I supposed to do?
Yeah, no, you're right. If it's a tiny amount, like 2 or 3 flakes, that gets nullified. Because don't forget, it wasn't cooked together or baked together, so it doesn't control the entire thing. Okay. Yeah. That's already substantial. That you see it there. Okay. Okay. Okay, but it's still the amount that. What's that?
I said I made the bracha on the Mezonot separately because there's zero way of me knowing if I'm having a flake or not.
They look similar. They look similar.
Remember?
Not very much. Yeah, I understand. A lot of milk. Okay.
There's a lot of milk in there.
Okay. Okay.
No, since I see the milk.
Yeah. Okay. So you say separately Mezonos and hadama. Yes, that's correct. Because here it wasn't cooked together, baked together. Yet the Mezonos doesn't get nullified, even though it's the minority. Normally we would say the bracha over the majority, and the minority gets nullified. But Mezonos never gets nullified because it's important. So, but on the other hand, it doesn't control the whole bowl having the majority hadama. So you say both brachos. That's correct. First Mezonos, take a flake of Mezonos, and then the oats hadama. Now, shehakol for the milk, in your case, okay.
You're killing me.
Okay, that's the best. That's the best.
2 cups of water anyway.
Good. So it keeps on. Okay. You should not say it's not in your dream? You sure it's not in your dream drinking the water? Okay, very good. Okay, right order, all in order. Okay, so good. So you have the shehakol separately because you have a lot of milk. But anyway, you can take a cup of water. Fine. So you have all 3 brachos. Perfect. Right. Normally, again, majority controls minority, but in Mezonos, not. Right. You're right. Then you're making separate bracha on each. Correct. That's right. Bracha shenatzricha. Right. But this case, you're right. That's the way to do it. And Mezonos first, and then Adama, and then Shakol. If that's the order. If you say Shakol before, because you drank water when you woke up, then it's okay. That's also good. So we said like this, for the first bracha, there's no limit, no time limit for first bracha. For saying the bracha achrona, we have the time limit of half an hour for a small serving and 72 minutes for a large meal. But for the first bracha, it can take you 5 hours. Doesn't matter how long, but you're right. You should have in mind when you say the first bracha to cover anything you'll be eating till you say the last bracha or till you go out of the house or till you go to sleep or something, right? Then that can take care of everything you eat during that session, that period of time. Okay. Now, the next situation here is also very, very, very special, very unique. We wouldn't think so. Again, this is surprising, but this is the halacha. We said that when you have mezonos combined with other foods and cooked together or baked together, the Mezonot takes control over the whole food. You just say Mezonot, even if it's a minority. But what happens if it wasn't cooked together, but the Mezonot is very well combined in the food? It's not just a mixture of two things. Like if you have rice or couscous with some sauce or gravy or vegetables on it, so then you see the difference. There's the rice or couscous and there's the vegetables. They're separate one from another, but they're now combined together as a mixture. They're mixed together. Then they weren't cooked together. So then we look at the majority versus minority, and Mezonot, even if it's minority, gets its own bracha. If it's a majority, then it's only Mezonot. That's how we generally say. By the way, rice, I mentioned rice a little bit by mistake, because rice, the Mezonot, is not a same type of Mezonot as it is for the 5 grains. So that's why we have Bari Nefashos at the end of rice and not Olam Michya. So rice can get totally nullified to a majority if it's minority in the mixture. We would not need to say Mezonot separately if the majority is the vegetables. You just have a little bit of rice in them. You do not need to say Mezonot separately. You just say Adama. Couscous, which is an original wheat, made out of wheat, original one of the 5 grains, that deserves Mezonos even if it's minority in a mixture. But then in that case, you say 2 brachos because you have the majority of vegetables, minority of couscous, minority Mezonos never gets nullified. On the other hand, it doesn't take control over the whole food. So you say 2 separate brachos. But what happens if it's so mixed, so well mixed together that every single bite you would take, you would have a Mezonos in it, or most bites you would take. And not only that, it's combined in a way that it looks like one piece. What's the example? Example is chocolate that has broken cookies in it. There's a bar of chocolate that has broken cookies in it. Same as some have nuts, broken nuts in the chocolate. But broken nuts would be a majority minority. Meaning majority is the chocolate, you say ashakol. The majority is nuts, you say ayitz. And one covers the other. Majority covers the minority. That's the kavit afel, it's simple. But if you have cookies, broken cookies in the chocolate, or ice cream that comes with broken cookies in it, that really makes it so tangled together, so much like one piece together, that it's as if it was cooked together. Cooking together doesn't necessarily mean only cooking and baking. It means that it became one piece. Unlike rice and peas or vegetables that are on it or mixed together with it, but it's still totally separate. They're separate from one another. The ice cream is one chunk now of ice cream that has in it ice cream and cookies, and broken cookies. So the halacha is, in this case, which we would not think so, the answer is Mezonos, right? That's the only bracha to say here. It's not a double bracha even.
I eat a lot of ice
cream. Yeah.
Totally separate.
You can totally separate it? Right.
You could pull out the brownie piece or the cookie piece.
Yeah.
But when you're getting ice cream, that's trying to make a Mezonos over your ice cream, like on top. And I'm saying, well, that solves the cone problem.
Yeah, that solves the cone problem. Right. You would need a separate bracha on the cone.
You're talking about cookie and cookie. You want ice cream?
Yeah, this is last Shavuot, right? Last Shavuot, right. Right. So that's, I know, it's a big surprising chiddush. It's a big surprising chiddush because after all, the minority is the cookie. The majority is the ice cream. But we said, even though it's minority, kol sheyeshbo, that's the concept. Kol sheyeshbo. The moment there's a little bit of mezonos, it controls the entire food, providing it was cooked or baked together. So now we're learning another situation where it controls the whole thing, when it's so well mixed that it's one chunk, like chocolate or ice cream. Now, now all this is true if you feel if it gives you good taste, if it supplies you with the taste of special taste of the cookie. Otherwise, if it's totally tasteless, you only taste the ice cream, then of course you don't say Mezonos. That's like we said, any combined combination. Mezonos and foods are there only, the mezonos is there only to stick things together or to make it puffed. If it's not there for the flavor, then you don't say mezonos. That's true for any cooked or baked food that includes flour, but the flour isn't there to provide taste, rather to stick things together, then you don't say mezonos. But in the ice cream, it's there for the flavor. Why do they add these cookies in the ice cream, the broken cookies or brownies? It's only for the flavor. Now, I remember from last year that one of you mentioned that sometimes it's not really a baked cookie. It's cookie dough, right? That's indifferent, okay. So cookie dough is anyway shehakol. Even if you take from the batter, thank you, that's the word I was looking for, the batter, or any dough that wasn't yet baked. Kids like eating from the batter, licking licking the last parts of the batter, or actually it's not so healthy, but to take pieces of the dough and eat them. It's not the healthiest thing, but we do sometimes small pieces. So the dough, even though it's a lot of flour, there's a lot of flour there. And that's the main component of the dough is the flour. But as long as it wasn't baked yet, it's shehakol. Same as you would eat, if someone would eat just flour on its own, it would be shehakol. Because it's ground wheat, you don't see the wheat anymore. You can't tell it's wheat, it's ground totally. And it wasn't baked yet to get at the importance of mezonos. So it's shehakol. So if it's cookie dough in the ice cream, then it's all shehakol anyhow. But if it's actual baked, crushed cookies, pieces of cookies or brownies that are crushed, broken up into the ice cream, then it's mezonos on the entire ice cream. Providing most of the time, most of the digging into the ice cream or licking the ice cream you'll be having a little bit of the mezonos. If it's just tiny amounts here and there, then it's nullified to the ice cream. Teeny amounts here and there, it's nullified to the ice cream. But if almost every single spoonful of ice cream, you get some of the cookie in there, then it's mezonos on the entire thing, even though the majority is ice cream shehakol. You should not, because if the halacha tells you that mezonos controls the entire food when it's so well mixed and becomes one chunk, then that's the proper bracha. If you make two separate brachos, shehakol and mezonos, unless you're eating some cookies or you're eating this ice cream, you say mezonos, and you're drinking water, saying shehakol, that's okay. If you feel so uncomfortable, then do that. Then just drink a cup of water, say shehakol, and then you've covered the ice cream here. But don't say shehakol over the ice cream itself, because it doesn't deserve a bracha. A separate bracha. It's bracha shenotzri. Yes.
On the airplane.
Yes.
The vegetarian meal. I thought it was just vegetables. I made that dama.
Yes.
And when I scooped in after 50 bites, I found a little couscous. It wasn't a bracha levatala to even after it had gone in my mouth. The next scoop to make the mezonah. Then I saw.
Right. You weren't aware of the couscous before, but it was like totally separate dishes.
It was like a layer on top.
Okay.
And said, whoa, there it is. And I knew that.
Then you should have said mezonos. Right. No, it's not a bracha levatala. Because anyhow, in such a situation, when it's two large amounts of each, meaning a layer of couscous and a layer of vegetables, you could definitely, to begin with, even had you known that there's couscous there, you should have said both brachos. Or you can say both brachos if they're two separate layers. If you mix the whole thing together, how it's meant to be eaten, I think, all mixed together, like you mix it into the couscous, then it's only mezonos. Because it's all mixed well, and every bite you take is couscous. So, right, it wasn't a bracha batala. You were fine by saying mezonos afterwards. The only thing is, you switch around the order. The proper order is mezonos first, but you didn't see it. Right. Had you seen it, you should have said mezonos first and then Adam. But that doesn't make much of a difference. Yeah. Okay. Now, another situation interesting is a shake. If you're having a shake which includes mezonos in it, there is some cookies that were broken into the shake. So there it depends. Because another halacha now that we have to learn, mezonos can only be said on a food, solid food, and not a liquid. Even if it's mezonos components in there, like crushed cookies. But if they made it so well crushed and liquefied it to completely liquid, then it's not mezonos anymore. Even if it had been the majority of the shake, even majority, it's usually not. But even a majority, any mezonos component that becomes a total liquid automatically switches into shehakol. There's no such thing to say mezonos over a liquid. So shakes, it depends how they're made. Some of them are made in a way that you still have to sort of not really bite, chew, but you feel solid pieces there. You feel it's not totally liquid. Feel some pieces there. So then you have to soften them with your tongue, or sometimes you can chew them a little bit. Right. Yeah, right. Get stuck in the straw, right. Right. Yeah, right. You still have to do something in your mouth to. No, so I was saying only if it's totally liquid. You don't feel any solid. I meant to the point, right? I went to the point where it's completely liquid, not just pieces that are combined in the shake, but they become totally liquid. If you're able to do it, to process it in such a way, like a blender or something that makes it completely liquid, then it's shehakol. Otherwise, it remains mezonos on the entire shake, because then we're in the same situation as the ice cream and the chocolate, that it has the combined mezonos, even though it wasn't cooked or baked together, but it becomes like one chunk, one piece, so it remains mezonos. It all depends. Do you feel slight chunks of solids or you don't? You have to check. Yeah. You don't mean the entire shake. You mean only within the shake, some crumbs here and there. You feel the pieces there. You feel pieces. It goes through a blender, but it depends how much they blend it, how well do they blend it to make it complete liquid, or still feel it. Phil Malka says here in one of the footnotes, here he says like this, he's always checking the actual mitziyut, he checks things realistically. הובאו לפניי שני סוגים של שייק עוגיות. באחד, פירורי העוגיות, crumbs, ניכרים, וצריך למועכם בפה, או לפחות לגלגלם בלשון. You felt crumbs, even crumbs, but you feel them and you need to sort of crush them a drop more before you swallow them. You feel you're crushing them a drop more before you swallowing them. And then ברכתו מזונות. ובשני, נטחנו הדק היטב, they were crushed or ground so well, נעשו שתייה גמורה. You didn't feel any crumbs, any chunks, anything solid at all. And he was able to drink it מהכוס לגרון, דרך הפה, ללא עיכוב של מעיכה בפה או בלשון. He just drank it like a complete drink, came straight down into his throat, ברכתו shehakol. And it's shehakol. So it depends on that exact different situation between the two types of shakes. It's hard to tell in advance, right? How do you know the bracha if you don't know yet how well it was blended in? You have to ask the person who prepared it. Is there any feeling of crumbs here, or is it completely blended like a drink, totally liquid? They use the bread and they cover the shake. Yeah, right. They may not be included. Right. Mezonot. Mezonot, normally we don't say even within a bread meal. Here it's different. You don't. Normally we don't make a mezonot on a piece of cake for dessert. No. Normally we don't, because It's a suffix bread. That's the problem. Mezonos, unless it has three criteria together, all three together, only then it's a definite mezonot within a bread meal. Otherwise, most cakes, you should not say mezonos at the end of the meal, even if it's just a dessert, because it's hard to define the difference between bread and cake. And the moment you say a motzi, it doesn't cover and include most cakes, most types of cakes. We'll get to that later on when we learn about, which type of cakes deserve mezonos at the end of the meal, but normally they don't. Yeah, so crushed cookie. It's interesting here in this case, since it's so well combined with the shake itself, and the shake is definitely deserves its own bracha at the end of the meal because it's like an ice cream where you say she'akol. It's a dessert, total dessert, has nothing to do with the bread. Oh, that's interesting. That's what I understand your question. It's a great question because in this case, it's not like eating a piece of cake. You're not eating a piece of cake. You're drinking a shake, which is definitely completely disconnected from bread. It doesn't look like bread, doesn't resemble bread in any way. And it's a mezonos because of the cake, but the cake really, had you eaten the cake on its own, you would not need to say mezonos. I would still say that in this case, you should say mezonos. Why? There's another idea besides those three conditions, those three criteria that make it a definite mezonos within a bread meal for a cake. Besides that, there's also to'ar lechem. If it doesn't appear like bread at all, then you do say mezonos, even if it doesn't fit all three criteria. For example, those bagele, we have the pretzels that are the small pretzels that you buy, like a round or a straight line, or a shminiot, like an 8. Those small pretzels you buy, those, if you eat at the end of the meal as like a dessert, not to fill you up, you're full, you're munching on some pretzels in the end of the meal, they do deserve mezonos. You do have to say a separate mezonos over such pretzels if you eat them just as a dessert in the end of the meal. Because they don't look like bread at all. They're crunchy, they're not puffed, they're small, they're no appearance like bread. Like matzah, right. Matzah is a big question. How come we say a motzi? Why is it like a cracker? Sfardim don't, right. Sfardim don't. The only reason Ashkenazim do, what's the difference between matzah and a cracker? The only difference is that people don't normally eat matzah as a snack. Matzah, you sit down for a meal to eat. That's normally done. Ashkenazi already decided that it's always a motzi. Too late. Ah, right. It is. It is because it's a complete matzah, and it's just covered. It's like spreading chocolate over your matzah. I know, totally covered, but they're made as a regular matzah and then coated with the chocolate. What's that? Right. But that's mezonos, and here it's a motzi. No, she's saying it's the idea that it doesn't lose its effect. A wafer and right, that's still mezonos. Yeah. Okay, but they're both still mezonos because even though they're covered with chocolate, the main component is the mezonos. The pesach zman, kif kef, all those are mezonos because the wafer inside doesn't get nullified to the chocolate and it remains a mezonos. Anyhow, no, I would think it's a good question. I would think that the shake that is a mezonos shake because you feel the crumbs inside or the chunks of solid pieces inside. So that would deserve a bracha, a separate bracha, even within a bread meal, because it doesn't resemble bread at all. Okay. I see. Pamela asked to repeat the questions. You're right. The Zoom women can't hear the questions. So I'm always answering without repeating the question. So I'll just explain what was just asked here. We're having a milkshake with crumbs or small pieces and chunks of mezonos, which deserves now a mezonos over drinking it. If it's drunken at the end of a meal as a dessert within a bread meal, does it still deserve its own bracha of Mezonos, or like in other cases when we're having just a piece of cake, normally most types of cakes, we do not say Mezonos at the end of the meal, even though it's just as coming as a dessert, we don't say Mezonos. Unlike ha'etz, ha'adam, ha'shehakol, for any type of dessert that we do say, but by Mezonos we don't normally, because cake resembles bread very much, and it's hard to define a difference. Only if there are three criteria, which we'll be learning later on, do we say a Mezonos over cake. But in this case, since it doesn't resemble bread in any way, it doesn't look like bread, it doesn't act like bread, and it's a total dessert, it's just Mezonos because it has those crumbs inside, but it's really the shake and looks totally different than bread, then I would think you should say Mezonos in such a case within a bread meal, because it comes as a dessert and it doesn't resemble bread at all whatsoever. Okay. Even with a straw doesn't necessarily mean that it's completely liquid. Right, but it can come up in the straw, small pieces that you feel them in your mouth. That's the idea. You feel them in your mouth, that's still Mezonos. Makes the whole thing Mezonos.
Very difficult to Mezonos, but I know that they do come up in the straw.
Yeah, and they get stuck. Oh, yeah. You're not prepared to chew it. Right. Oh, yeah? Oh, boy. Wow, that's dangerous. I guess here with a spoon, and then it's better.
Okay, they make it in the milk, but even when they blend it, the chunks of
pretzel's still. Oh, yeah.
It's okay, I'm still here.
Yeah, but it's I guess it's still tiny enough that people won't really choke. Yeah, I understand. It's very difficult to make Mezonos over such a drink, which definitely majority of it doesn't include Mezonos. What can you do? That's halacha. So I'm saying these are very surprising halachos, but that's how final halacha should be, unless it's completely liquid. And completely liquid is shehakol. Carol is asking, does it matter how much in the shake? Doesn't matter. What if it's such a small quantity compared to the liquid? No, that's true. It's a tiny quantity of these crumbs and pieces that let's put it this way. The criteria is, if the majority of times that you drink from the milkshake, you don't feel any crumbs, majority of your sips, you would not feel a crumb. Only here and there, once in a while, you feel a crumb coming in, or you feel a chunk, something of a chunk coming in, that would still be only shehakol. Because that's like having a teeny amount of Mezonos in a soup, let's say. You're having a soup with 2 or 3 shkedei mak floating in the soup. That doesn't require Mezonos. Not controlling everything and not on its own even. The teeny amount does get nullified. Even though we said kol sheyeshbo, any amount of Mezonos, even if it's minority, controls the entire bracha if it was baked or cooked together with, or in this case, dissolved in the milkshake or in the ice cream, combined as one chunk, that controls the entire food. It's only Mezonos. But it has to be that majority of spoonfuls that you take or sips that you drink from the milkshake, you feel the Mezonos. If it's a teeny minority, that the majority of times you're eating from it, you don't even feel the Mezonos, and just here and there you feel it, then it's not even kol sheyeshbo. It's not even a minority. It's like Rav Shlomo Zalman is saying that on Pesach, when there's the concept of chametz asur b'kolshu, chametz, even a crumb of chametz, you're not allowed to eat even if it's dissolved in a great amount of kosher Pesach food. You're not allowed to eat the whole mixture. If one crumb of bread fell into a chulent on Pesach, you can't eat the entire chulent. It doesn't get nullified. That's a very, very stringent, special halacha by chametz. It's not true by any other forbidden food. That it doesn't get nullified within 60 and doesn't get nullified within 100 or 200 or 1,000. It's just, if a crumb is in there, you can't eat the whole thing. But, says Rav Shlomo Zalman, even kosher who has a shear, it can't be that kosher is really a minute, teeny amount within a huge pot of something that it makes the whole thing non-kosher. His example is the kineret. When we drink our water on Pesach, So those who aren't extra stringent and I would say crazily stringent, who sift their water before Pesach and they only drink from sifted water before Pesach. They sift it with, in their house and they have buckets and buckets of water before Pesach. And then even if there was some chametz in the Kinneret thrown in by someone to feed the fish, a few pieces of pita or crumbs of bread, so it was nullified before Pesach because they took it in there. No, so they're saying it's so minute that it gets dissolved in the water, but it's still there. They hold that it's still considered mashu of chametz, even though it dissolves in the water totally. Yeah, right. They don't see anything, but no, I'll put it this way. Their concern is that they've accumulated water before Pesach, no matter if they sifted or not. No, that doesn't really matter. They accumulate water before Pesach so that if there was chametz in it, even dissolved, it gets nullified before Pesach because then you don't yet have the issue of kolshu. So it got nullified before Pesach to the water that they took out. But new fresh water that comes from the Kinneret during Pesach, they won't drink from because it may have that teeny amount. But that's where Shlomo Zalman says that's totally wrong. It's nonsensical at all. He says even kolshu has a shear, has an amount, and this is less than what Chazal meant by saying kolshu. So here too, if it's kosher Pesach water, it could be. Yeah, or they made sure the workers didn't come in with a sandwich as they were working with the waters and bottles and everything, right? Yeah. But you're right, even if he had come in. Yeah, I know, but it's not necessary because even if they came in with a sandwich, if you see in their bottle just clear water, that means it got dissolved totally, so it's not even kolshu. That's Shlomo Zalman's point here, that it doesn't matter if there was a crown that fell in the Mayeden factory somewhere, but you see the water is clear. If you see something dirty in the water, then of course, and it's not kosher Pesach, don't drink. But you hope, yeah, bigger problems if you find some dirt in the water, in the bottle. Okay, one last point for this year, schnitzel. Schnitzel is very interesting because according to all the rules we just learned, we've been learning in this chapter, schnitzel should be mezonos, no question. You have a coating of breadcrumbs or cookies, whatever. It's usually breadcrumbs coating the. Now, by the way, why isn't it a motzi? It should be a motzi because it's breadcrumbs. It's not even mezonos. It's not cake or cookie that you coat the schnitzel with. It's bread. So the truth of the matter is, it depends how you prepare the schnitzel. If you bake it or fry it. If you're frying your schnitzel, then and the crumbs are less than a kazait, each crumb, and of course they are. Each crumb is less than a kazait. So if you're frying, it's like cooking. It usually has a nice amount of oil. It's not just to wet the bottom of the pan. It has some oil there when you're frying schnitzel. It's not healthy at all, but it's tastier than the baked ones usually. So if you have the fried schnitzel, then definitely the breadcrumbs become mezonos because anything you cook, any crumbs of bread you cook or fry become mezonos. By cooking, they lose the status of a motzi and they turn into mezonos. But if you bake your schnitzel, and you have breadcrumbs, why isn't it a motzi? It never lost its bread stature. It remains bread. And we know even on one crumb of bread, you should be saying a motzi. You should be washing and saying a motzi. So the answer is to both questions, whether it's mezonos or a motzi. The answer is, what's that? We wash without a bracha, right? Without the bracha, because we're not going to eat kabetza, right? We wash without the bracha, and we say the bracha of a motzi. We need one crumb of bread. So why isn't this a motzi or mezonos if it was fried? So the answer most posts can give, and it's hard to explain because kol sheyeshbo, even if your main intent is to eat the meat, you're not intending at all on having a mezonos now or motzi, but kol sheyeshbo, it's now mixed together and baked together, cooked together, fried together. It should be that even a little amount, and even if it's the secondary food, not the most important food for you, but it's mezonos or motzi, it should not be nullified. At least say 2 brachos over the coating separately and the meat separately. But even more so, it should be completely taking control over the whole schnitzel, saying on mezonos or motzi. So the answer that the post can give here, but you should know, there are poskim who really decided finally to say mezonos or hamotzi if it's baked on schnitzel. There are such poskim. It's Rav Karelitz holds this way, the Chut HaShani of Karelitz, and the Olet Zion, which are one Sephardic and one Ashkenazic, big poskim, decided that should be the proper bracha for schnitzel. But most poskim say otherwise. Why? They have a very interesting idea here. They say that the mezonos part, the coating over the schnitzel, it's not really a separate food combined with. Like if you have the broken or crushed cookies within the ice cream, or the more simple situation of a kugel that you have with mezonos in it, with flour in it that gives taste and not just to connect everything together. All these situations, the mezonos part is really on its own. It's really an entity of its own, combined with other ingredients. The cookies or the flour there, it's an entity of its own when it's there to give flavor and taste to the kugel, or to fill you. It's there to fill you. So it has an entity of its own. Here in the schnitzel, the coating is really not an entity of its own at all. No one eats breadcrumbs. You would not eat it separately ever. The reason it's there is just for the flavor. It's almost like a spice. They call it tavlin. It's a mezonos spice. And a spice, even though it's mezonos, does get nullified to the main thing, to the ikar, which is the meat. So it's shehakol. Most poskim say it's shehakol. I heard that recently. I never heard it before. I just heard recently. So one of my daughters came home saying she had a delicious schnitzel because it has pretzels on it. So that should be mezonot. Those are actually pretzels that people crush to make a coating. Wow. Right. That would be eaten on its own totally.
But you would never eat it once.
No, because it doesn't lose its status of mezonos. It came from mezonos, and it would have been eaten alone as a mezonos food. Right. Now that it's a coating, you're saying it may lose its essence as mezonos because it's no longer. Right. Cookie crumbs you also wouldn't eat as a crumb, really. Right. Yeah, it's just acting now as a spice, sort of. It's acting like a tavlin, whereas cookie crumbs within an ice cream are still acting as cookies. You're still enjoying the cookie as a cookie. It's not really a spice to the ice cream. It's like it's still its own entity, even within the ice cream. Here, it sort of gets, that's a good question. That's a very good question. Yeah.
Totally like a regular schnitzel copy.
Yeah, you can't.
Egg and the oil.
Oh, everything? You buy egg and oil? You don't feel that. You can tell it's pretzels? I guess it depends how crushed they are. If they're so well crushed that you don't feel at all that it's a pretzel and it's combined with the oil and egg. But that's not mezonos. Pecans are anyway get nullified to the chicken because they're not, that's a shehakol, because they're not important on their own, right? The mezonos is the issue here. The mezonos doesn't get nullified even though it's a minority. So pretzels, crushed pretzels, I would say it makes a difference. If you still can tell that it's pretzels, you can still see them, you can still.
Pick up the dust. It becomes like a flour.
Right. Mamash like flour? Mash.
Not every piece. It's definitely still.
Some here and there that are still crunchy. You can actually see the pieces of pretzels. That's what I understood from my daughter. She was she ate by someone and she really saw the pretzels. Yeah. So I would say that's a difference. The ones that you can still see the actual pieces of pretzel, then it's a Mezonos schnitzel, completely Mezonos. That's called sheyesh, even though it's minority and it's not the main component of the food. It's still Mezonos because you can really tell that it's pretzels and that doesn't get nullified and it controls the whole thing. But if it's completely crushed to dust, almost like flour, then it's a shahakol schnitzel because then it gets back to normal. One last point for schnitzel: if you have a thick coating, that's usually in the yeshivot and ulpanot, they're stingy on the meat. So they have a thick coating of the Mezonos part, then it's definitely Mezonos according to all poskim. You don't say shahakol. Maybe I don't remember how it looks. Yeah, I think that right. The off tov, the frozen prepared schnitzels, the small piece. Right. Yeah. Crushed, and within it, it's combined with the Mezonos. Gefilte fish has, but that's only to stick together. But there's no coating around it besides. Coating around, plus it's connecting. So the flour that's connecting the piece of chicken does not require Mezonos. That's like a gefilte fish, which is shahakol, even though you may have breadcrumbs inside to connect the fish together to make it one clump. That's still shahakol. Right. No, so I'm saying the fact that it's that it has it combined inside to connect, that wouldn't affect the bracha. That would still be shahakol. But the coating around, I would still look at it as shahakol versus the coating. And if it's a coating, a thick coating, it's Mezonos. If it's a thin coating, it will remain shahakol. That the part that's inside combining with the flour doesn't make a difference.
Make a Mezonot on that one,
the thick one make a Mezonot, yes.
And the regular ones,
regular thin ones, shahakol, except for some poskim all that even that's Mezonos. But normally we say shahakol over schnitzel, right? Okay, very good.
Thank you very much.
Very welcome. Have a good week. Bye-bye to everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Call to. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.